Hello, hello. Welcome back to Life After Plus One. I'm Leanne, your podcast host and your single parent mentor and coach. And today I want to talk about a topic that I am seeing spoken about so much lately. And it's not what I had planned for today, but because it's been such a hot topic, I've just seen everywhere with clients, in my sessions, on social media, and it's being blindsided. People going through a divorce or a breakup and having no idea it was coming. And it's such a common trend lately. And it's mind-boggling because when you're in the dating world, no one likes to be ghosted. Ghosting is a big talk. It's a big thing in the dating world. And how people hate it and how it hurts them and how it has an impact on them. And people are wondering why do they do this? Why couldn't they just give me a reason? Why couldn't they call? Why couldn't they text? But it's now becoming more so common in the world of long-term relationships and marriages for people to be blindsided. Now, it's not the same as ghosting. Ghosting, you can just block someone and delete. But realistically, when you have kids, when you're married, when you're living together, you can't just block and delete, can you? But you can blindside them, which is kind of like the next alternative to ghosting when you're in a long-term relationship. And I want to talk about that today because, as I said, it is such a common trend that is happening a lot in long-term relationships and marriages. And I don't mean just blindsided by little things happening. I mean blindsided by the breakup, having no idea this breakup was coming until that day or that moment that their partner or now ex sat down with them and said, "I'm done, I'm over, we're finished, I want a divorce." Let's talk about that. Welcome to the Life After Plus One podcast, where we turn life's lemons into delightful lemonade. Get ready for inspiring stories, uplifting conversations, and all the tips and tricks to rock your single parent journey with style. I'm your host, Leanne, and it's time to embrace the adventure of Life After Plus One. So let's dive in. Now, talking about being blindsided, it is a very weak way to end a relationship. And as I said in the intro, the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because I'm seeing it so much. And I honestly believe that the main reason why this is happening, why it's becoming such a trend, is because we're so used to doing everything on social media. People are so used to not talking about things. They don't have to face people front on anymore. They don't have to talk to people. Everything is done by social media, by writing. And when you see people need advice, they go straight to social media. And sometimes I see things on there, I'm like, guys, this is not a social media question. What are you doing? And people on there that are replying, I see some of the replies sometimes, I'm like, holy shit, do not give that advice. And it just makes me cringe. Some of the things I see people suggest is like, oh God, what are you doing? But this is my point and why people are not confident to break up or to end a relationship. They're not confident to sit down and have a discussion and talk to their own partner when something isn't right. Because that's what happens when you get to a point in a relationship where you're either getting ghosted or blindsided. And we're going to focus on blindsiding because that's the thing. Blindsiding is when you're in a long-term relationship. It's not a couple of months or just a few weeks. You're in a marriage or a relationship with kids. And maybe you are back in the dating world as a single parent and you've been together for a few years. Maybe you're living together again. Well, not again. Maybe you've moved in with this new partner and you're living together. And next minute you've been blindsided. Sorry, can't do that. And that's happened to me. As a single parent, I was dating many years ago. And they left for work. We were living together and I get a text saying, sorry, I can't do this anymore. It's like, buddy, are you kidding me right now? Could you be any more weak? And it's a real kick in the guts. But especially when you're in a marriage and you've got the kids together, it's a long-term relationship and that's how someone chooses to handle it. And it is a massive kick in the guts because you're just like, what the hell just happened? Here I am thinking everything's fine. We're all going good. We're living together. Things are happy. Might have planned a holiday. You might have got Christmas planned or you've got all these things planned. The next minute, sorry, I want a divorce, or sorry, I'm done, I want to break up. And the thing is, when someone does this, they've clocked off. They're done. They've shut up shop. They're not open for any kind of discussion because they've mentally and emotionally prepared themselves and said, I'm done, I'm out. And do you know what? That's fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Everyone's entitled to not be stuck in a relationship if they're not happy. That's fine. That's valid. But what is not valid is when you're in a relationship with someone, it's not just a little casual fling and just see how it goes. If it doesn't work, see you later. No, you put in the effort. Even though I'm here to support single parents, even though I'm here to empower you to enjoy your time being single, I'm also here to encourage you to make those relationships work. I don't want to say to anyone, just be single and stay stuck there. Well, I shouldn't say stay stuck there because it's not a bad place to be. But it's not about just being single and saying, I'm independent now. This is my life. I don't give a fuck about a partner. It's about saying, no, you know what? I want to live the best version of me. I want to be the best version of me. I want to live the best life I possibly can. And I want to show up as the best version of me. And to do that, it includes being able to communicate in a healthy way, especially with your partner. And if you're doing this with a partner, someone you've had kids with, someone you live with, it just makes you think, well, what kind of relationships do they have with other people if they can't even communicate with their own partner? And that is the thing. A relationship is built on communication and it's built on trust. And if you cannot, or I shouldn't say you, because you could be the person that's been in this situation, so you may have been blindsided. But if you or your partner, whoever's done the blindsiding, has felt like they couldn't communicate with their partner, then there was something massively wrong in that relationship. And it is unfortunate that it took for that person to turn around and say, I want to break up or I want a divorce, for you to actually realize, okay, there was something wrong and they weren't happy, but I'm ready to fix it. I'm ready to do something. And that's quite often what happens. When that other person didn't know and they're like, okay, shit, I'm sorry, I had no idea. Let's make it work. But this person's already clocked off. They're already like, no, I don't want to make it work now. I've planned this. I've decided what I want to do. I've decided I just want to be single. I don't want to handle this anymore. And it's a really shit way to handle a breakup, if you ask me. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that at all. Because that is the thing. When you're in a relationship with someone, it's not a life sentence. It's not something, well, really, it kind of is till death do us part, really, isn't it, when you're married? But the whole point of it is it's quite often sometimes treated a little bit too disposable. And I come across it a lot in my line of work where people get the shits or they're not happy in a relationship and they're like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And, you know, that's fine. If you don't want to put up with something, that is fine. However, I am all for putting in all the effort to make a relationship work. And the advice I always give when someone wants to break up, when someone wants to end a relationship, and again, even though I support single parents and I'm here to help you guys and I'm here to empower you guys, I'm all for suggesting you exhaust all options that you can take to make a relationship work before actually pulling the plug. And that is what I'm big on. Do what you can to make it work, because it's not just a matter of leaving, see you later, goodbye. When you're in a long-term relationship, when you've got kids and you've got a house and you've got all this other stuff together, it is a huge step. And to all of a sudden turn around and say, I'm clocked off, I'm done. And it happens a lot in marriages because people get to a stage where they're just sitting comfortably or they're not comfortable anymore. They've had enough. They're done. Maybe their partner's not showing the affection or their love, or they're not going on dates. They're not doing anything fun. And they're treated like maybe they're the one doing all the housework, or they're doing the one earning all the money, or they're the ones. It's not an equal partnership anymore. And so one person has built up resentment. And then all of a sudden, instead of talking about that resentment that's building up, they're like, I'm done. I'm clocking off. And that is why I'm so big about communication, because when you don't communicate about things, this is what happens. You build up that resentment. And when something happens, you might see your partner not helping around the house as much, or not contributing as much, or not helping with the kids as much. And all of a sudden, you see it happening. But you're just like, okay, I'll just let it slide. I'll just let it slide. I'll just let it slide. And eventually you reach breaking point and you're like, fuck it, I'm done. I'm out of this relationship. Because you haven't discussed it. You're expecting them to read your mind. And that is such a common thing when you're in a relationship. You expect your partner to know when you're upset. Maybe you're giving passive-aggressive digs. Maybe you're being sarcastic and making these comments. Or maybe you're not even saying anything at all. Maybe you're just walking around doing the huff and puff and expecting them to realize. That is not healthy communication. So when you get to that point in a relationship, whether you're the person that's been blindsided, whether you're the person that's doing the blindsiding, either way, there's something in the relationship that hasn't worked. And a lot of times what people forget is when you're in a relationship, you've got to still put in the effort to make it work. It is like anything in life. It takes work. Like if you want to lose weight and you want to maintain that weight, you've got to continue doing it. You've got to continue exercising, or you've got to continue watching what you eat. Or if you want to go on a holiday, or you want to save up for something bigger, you've got to keep saving. You've got to keep going. You don't just save for a couple of weeks and go, or a week or two and say, yep, I'm good, that's it. No, it's a long-term thing. Same with relationships. You've got to constantly put in that effort. And so many people get into relationships, they have their few dates, it all gets not fun and, butterflies, roses, whatever else. And all of a sudden you're living together, you got kids, and that's all gone. It's all gone out the window. There's no dates, there's no romance, there's no affection, there's no sweet talk. And all of a sudden you're just like, this is not what I signed up for. But it goes both ways. Both of you need to put in that effort. And it's very common when you get in that headspace of, I've just got to provide for the kids. I've got to financially be there. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. And then I've got to get home and cook, and I've got to get home and clean. I've got to get home and that. And he just gets stuck in this mundane rat race of life. And you forget about what's important. Your relationships. Your relationships. That is what we're here for, to build these relationships. Not to just work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep. And this is why I'm so passionate about being a business owner, because I hate that 9 to 5 work life, come home, cook dinner, wash up, go to bed, repeat. It's that whole wash and repeat cycle. I couldn't think of anything worse. Now, no disrespect to anyone who has that lifestyle. That's fine. That's your choice. But for me, I can't do that. I like to have a life where I can get up and maybe do something different every day. If I want to get up and go for a walk at 6 o'clock in the morning, I will do that. If I want to go for a walk in between clients at maybe 11 o'clock in the day, I can do that. If I want to go to the gym late in the afternoon, I can do that. If I want to go out for dinner one night with just me and my daughter, we can do that. I'm not stuck on any strict schedule. And I think that's what makes my life so fun. And that's why I love it so much. Just being stuck in that strict schedule of work, school, dinner, repeat, or other meals in between. But it gets boring. It gets monotonous. And you get stuck in that routine, and it just becomes habit. And you've just become like roommates. And you don't like being that roommate. And sometimes you end up becoming like a parent to your partner. And that is not what you signed up for. But the thing is, if you're not saying anything, even though you think to yourself, well, they should know, they should see. But sometimes they just might be thinking they might like doing that for me, or they might be so oblivious where they don't even realize, or maybe they are a little bit selfish and see that you're doing it and think, well, I'm tired, I can't be asked. They're doing it, so I'll just leave it. But if you're not communicating this, if you're not talking to them about what you're not happy about, then nothing is going to change. So sitting there being resentful at your partner for not providing what you want in a relationship and not being there for you in a relationship, it's fair enough to get upset at that, but you can't get upset at them if you're not actually communicating that to them. You cannot expect anyone to read your mind. You need to spell it out. And there are some people that you really literally do need to spell it out for. And this is why it is so common for me to see lately all these people that are coming out of breakups. They're like, I had no idea it was coming. I was completely blindsided. And it breaks my heart. And they know, they're like, I've got stuck in this cycle of work. I got stuck in this cycle of the kids and doing everything else, and then cooking and cleaning all the kids' routine. I got stuck in the cycle of all this. And they realize what happened. But the thing is, they also realize that they could have changed it if their partner at the time had said something, but nothing was said. So when you've been blindsided and you're going through a breakup like this, it is very hard to kind of process, because in your head, you're just like, I want to make it work. What can I do? How can I fix it? I just want to do it. Let's go to counseling. How can I change? And you just start thinking, well, it was me. I did it wrong. I've obviously done something wrong, because they're telling me they don't want to be with me. They're telling me they don't want to fix anything. They're telling me it's too late. So clearly I've done something wrong all this time in the relationship. And if I had done right, then we'd still be together. And it's very easy to get in that mindset of blaming yourself for when you get blindsided. But realistically, it's a two-person relationship. You can't sit there and blame one person for the relationship not working when there's two of you there. And it takes two people to make a relationship work. And it is so sad to see all these people that are coming out of these relationships that are blindsided and they're blaming themselves. I just wish I did this. I just wish I did that. I just wish I did this. Well, how about you just wish that your ex communicated things to you? How about you just wish that you had a partner that was confident enough or happy enough to come and sit down and talk to you when things weren't right? How about you wish you had a partner that was willing to show affection, that was willing to show interest in you, that was willing to show interest in making your relationship work? And that is sadly what happens. And as I just pointed out, you've got to put in that work. Go on those dates. If your relationship is not like it was when you first met, then it's a good chance you're not doing those things that you were doing like when you first met. Because when you first met, you're probably going on dates. You probably got the butterflies and, the little smiles every time they text you. Now, when they text you, you're like, oh, fuck off, I'm not interested. Am I right? Do we all go through that pattern? But the thing is, you're in that headspace or you're thinking that because you're just caught up in this whole rat race of life. You're just stuck in this mundane cycle of work, bills, money, kids, and there's no fun. There is no enjoyment. But you need to create that as well. You need to make it happen. And yes, it's easy to get stuck in that cycle. It's easy to blame yourself. But it is important to also acknowledge that this other person that has blindsided you needs to also take a little bit of accountability in this. Actually, not a little bit, an equal part of accountability. So it really does break my heart when I see this. And I just think to myself, well, why couldn't they just bring it up? Why couldn't they just say to their partner, well, listen, I'm not happy with this. Or I need you to help me out around the house a bit more. Or I need you to help me a bit more with finances. We're doing a bit tight. I can't keep working like this. Or I need you to help me a bit more with the kids. But so many people don't. They just expect their partner to mind read. Or they expect them to just step up and do what they want them to do. And in theory, it would be nice. But it doesn't happen that way. No one does that. Like we just think to ourselves, oh, I wish our kids would keep their room clean, or I wish my kid would do this, or I wish they would do that. They're not just going to do it, even though they know that their room's meant to be clean, even though they know they need to put their shoes away, or even they know they need to be out of the house by a set time. They're going to take their time. They're going to take their time getting out of the house. They're going to take their time getting ready. They're not just going to do things because you're just expecting them to do it. You've got to say it to them, don't you? You've got to keep reminding them. And unfortunately, it happens like that with adults too. And especially when you get stuck in this cycle where you're just doing the same thing day in, day out. You've got to sometimes give a little nudge saying, hey, you know what? I think we should go on a date. I think we should have a little bit of romance back in our relationship again. I would like it if you just held my hand once in a while or gave me a compliment. So I totally understand when relationships fall apart. I totally understand people do grow apart. These things happen. But I'm not a big fan of when people end it in a way where the other person had no idea it was coming. And one thing I discuss a lot when these situations arise is quite often, or more often than not, pretty much actually, I'll take it all the way back. Always, when these things happen, it's because of the communication in the relationship was completely lacking. There was zero communication about what was working, what wasn't working, what they're happy about, what they weren't happy about. And that is what you need in a relationship. That is what you need to make it work. You need to know that you're both on the same page. You need to know that you're both getting what you want out of the relationship. And if something's not working, talk it out. Okay, how can we make this work? What do you need from me? What can I do differently? That's what it's about. It's not just about having a few little fun dates, getting a few little butterflies, living together, and then boom, done. That's it. You've settled, you're in your relationship. You don't have to worry about anything else. No, if you want your relationship to work, you've got to keep putting in the effort. You've got to keep showing interest in your partner. And that is what happens. People forget to show that interest in them. People forget to say, I love you. And when they do, it's just robotic, maybe at the end of a conversation or maybe a goodnight kiss and love you. but there's no meaning behind it. Show someone that you love them. Show someone that you care for them. Show someone that they're your partner for a reason. And it's not about, well, not just about, I should say, when you're coming out of a divorce or coming out of a long-term relationship. Even those short-term relationships that you start getting into when you're back in the dating world as a single parent. And like I mentioned at the start, it is a common trend for people not to communicate with their partner. They're not confident enough in themselves because, especially when you're a single parent, you've been through a breakup. Your confidence is quite often at a low. Your self-worth is at a low. You're feeling shit in yourself. So you just think, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to upset them. So let's just leave it and I'll keep the peace. And all that does is build resentment. And that's when you end up getting to the point where it's like, fuck it, I'm done. I'm pulling the plug on this. And then you end up blindsiding them. That's pretty much how it works. But one thing I cannot emphasize enough, and I talk about it a lot on my social media pages and different podcast episodes, communication is not about being confrontational. It's not about starting a fight. It's not about just nitpicking. And I feel like that's what a lot of people think it is by talking about things that they don't like. It's being whingy or bitchy or moany or just being miserable. And that's not what it's about. You can communicate things without being made to feel like you're being a whinger or you're being a sulk or you're just being negative. You can sit down and just say, listen, I've noticed this is happening. We need to change this. It's just not working. But instead of saying, you did this, I don't like this. When you come out with accusations and you come out with blaming, yes, that is being confrontational. That is not healthy communication. There is a big difference there. And I feel like that's where so many people get those lines blurred. Because as soon as you start it with the blaming, the accusations, the questioning, why did you do this? Why did you do this? Why that? Why this? Why this? You did this. I don't like this. That is, yes, being a little nitpicky. There is a way to sit down and talk about things in a healthy way without blaming. You can ask the questions. You can find out what you can do differently. You can see ask them why they're doing this. There are ways to address things without starting a fight. And one thing that I always mention, if you're with a partner who doesn't like to talk, who won't want to sit down and listen to you, then you need to ask yourself, how healthy is your relationship? Because that is what a relationship is built on, healthy communication. And if you're with someone that's not willing to talk about anything, that is a bit of a concern. Actually, I'll rephrase that. That is a big concern. So going back to the topic of being blindsided, and when you're in that position of the one being blindsided, it's important to remember that there was something that they could have done. There was something that they could have brought up and brought to the table and discussed with you as a way to fix the relationship before it got to the point that it did. But they didn't. There are things that they could have communicated, but they didn't. And the biggest thing I see people struggle with when they're in this situation is, but why was I not good enough to fight for? Why did they not fight for me? Why did they not want to make it work with me? And that's a hard pill to swallow, isn't it? But quite often, it's not so much something that's wrong with you. Because in their eyes, yes, there may be something wrong that's happening in the relationship that they're not happy with. But again, that just falls back on that question. Well, why didn't they want to come and talk to you? Why didn't they want to fix it? Why didn't they want to do anything to make it better? And it's sad when these situations do happen with kids. And like I said, things do sadly get so disposable these days. It's like, I'm not happy, I'm out, I'm done, I'm giving up. Okay, but before you give up, have you done anything to make it work? Have you honestly exhausted all avenues of what you can do to fix your relationship before you pull the plug? And that is what I'm a big fan on. That is, I cannot emphasize that enough. Do what you can to make it work. Don't just pull the plug on the relationship, especially when you have kids, because there was an incident that happened that you didn't like. I mean, obviously there are certain incidences where I'd say, no, definitely not. You do not need to tolerate that. Get out now. But the sad thing is, those kinds of incidents where something really bad happens, where you do need to get out, that's not a blindsiding issue. They know what had happened. When you're getting blindsided, it's usually you had no idea. And quite often there wasn't even an argument. There was nothing that could have even raised the question of maybe they're going to break up with me. Maybe they're not happy. It's just little things that have happened and they've been stewing on it. And they got to the point, it's like, I've had enough. I'm out. I don't want this anymore. Or it's just like, well, you know what? If you're not willing to fight for me, then I don't want you either. And that's how you need to look at it, because you want someone who's going to fight for you. You want someone who's willing to make your relationship work. You want someone who is able to communicate to you, not just sit there and hold a grudge, not just sit there and be resentful and angry because things aren't going their way. That is not a healthy relationship. So as hard as it is to accept, quite often it's a sign that it wasn't a healthy relationship. It wasn't going in the right direction. And so often people get caught up in the headspace, but maybe we could have just done counseling and it could have fixed everything. Maybe we could have just done this and it would have fixed everything. But realistically, if that other person who just came and blindsided you was interested in doing counseling, then they would have suggested it. They would have done it. Or they just clearly have no interest in doing that. And that is a very common theme. There are a lot of people out there that have zero interest in counseling. They have zero interest in doing anything to better themselves. They're happy just to stay where they are. They don't want to grow. They don't want to heal. They don't want to change. They don't see anything wrong in what they're doing. And that is why a lot of people do blindside you, because they don't see that they're doing anything wrong. They don't see that counseling is going to fix things. They don't want to do counseling. They're done. They're finished. I'm out. But realistically, you deserve someone that's going to fight for you. You deserve someone that's going to come and talk to you and say, hey, we need to change this. This isn't working. You deserve someone that's going to have your back no matter what. And it is really hard to get your head around when kids are involved in this, because you just think, why wouldn't they make it work when we've got kids? But the thing is, you need to remember, and as I just said, they're not willing to change. They're not willing to do anything different. And quite often in these situations, they're relying on the person that they've just blindsided to be the one that fixes everything, to be the one that changes, to be the one that does better. But even though now it's too late because they've just ended it. But what you need to realize is this person is probably now going to go into another relationship doing the exact same thing with their bad communication, with their ways of holding resentment and not talking about things. And you will go off and look at what happened. You'll probably blame yourself, and then you'll seek therapy. You'll seek coaching. You'll do something to better yourself. And that there is you winning. And that's what it's about. And again, this is what I always emphasize in pretty much every podcast episode. This is all about, life is all about you being the best version of you. And this, sometimes we get put in these shitty situations that push us to something better. And you quite often don't see it in the moment. When you're going through that breakup, you're just like, well, why did they do this to me? Why couldn't they just try fix it? Why couldn't they make it work with me? Why was I not worth it? Why do they not want to get counseling? But realistically, if it was an option, they would have done it. If they wanted to do it, they would have done it. It's not something wrong with you. It's that they're clearly not at a place where they want to do better. They're not in a place where they want to grow. They're not at a place where they want to look at the uncomfortable stuff. And the uncomfortable stuff is the things that aren't working. And a lot of people don't like dealing with that, which is why a lot of people don't do things like coaching and therapy, because they don't like dealing with things that make them uncomfortable, because dealing with that is where you grow. It's where you heal. It's where you become that better version of you. It's where you start to learn to handle things differently. But a lot of people don't like that. They don't like doing that. They don't like facing reality. So what do? They run. And that's not a reflection of you. That's a reflection of how they handle things. And I guarantee you, if you look back on your relationship where you were blindsided and things that happened in your relationship, there is probably a lot of examples of situations where you had arguments and they just didn't handle it. And they didn't talk about things. And they didn't say when they were upset, or they didn't talk about what they weren't happy about. They just closed off. And that's not healthy. And eventually they got to a point, it's like, no, I've had enough. But that's not your fault. They've just dragged you through that. They've just dragged you through this relationship where they're not willing to do better. They're not willing to be better. They're not willing to change. And boom, they just dumped it out all on you. And you're like, well, fuck, what's wrong with me? What could I have done differently? You probably could have done something differently. Hindsight's always a great thing. But the shit thing is, you don't often know until you're there, until it's too late. But the thing is, the ones that always come out of this and feel like it's their fault, the ones that always come out of this and feel like they could have done better, they could have done something differently, the ones that have been blindsided, they're usually the ones that want to better their life. They're the ones that grow. They're the ones that come out and learn how to do things differently. They're the ones that actually self-reflect and go, okay, what can I do better going forward? But the ones who usually do the breaking up, the ones who blindside, the ones who don't want to deal with anything are the ones that are just going to keep going through life doing the exact same thing. And I guarantee you, if you stay together, there is a very high chance that counseling, therapy, anything like that would not have even happened. And quite often in these situations where it does happen, there is a few sessions. Maybe they do one or two and they get to the point, it's like, nah, it's not for me. I know I did it with my daughter's father. We did counseling. And I think it was maybe even one or two sessions in with us as well. And he's like, nah, it's not helping me. I don't need it. They don't feel like they need to change. They don't feel like they're doing anything wrong. They don't feel like it's them. They're not wanting to deal with this uncomfortable stuff. So even if you did attempt to do counseling when you were together, there's a good chance it wouldn't have resolved anything because they don't want to do anything differently. So don't sit there and blame yourself thinking, what could I have done differently? And as I just said, hindsight, there probably was a few things you could have done differently. But realistically, there's a lot of things that they could have done differently. You didn't realize that in the moment. You weren't doing anything wrong. That's the thing. You were just doing your best to hold the family together. You were doing your best as your role as mom or as dad to do what you can to keep everything afloat. And all of a sudden, it just got thrown back in your face as a big F you. And now looking back at it in hindsight, you think, yeah, I could have done this differently. I could have done that. I could have done this. But there's also so much that they could have done. And you know deep down that there were probably flaws in your relationship. You know deep down that there were things that probably could have been done differently. But I guarantee you also know deep down that it's not all your fault either. So if you have been blindsided, I want you to remember that even though it stings, even though you're going to sit there and question yourself, you're going to doubt yourself, it's probably going to have a hit on your confidence, and you're just going to think, well, I'm not good enough. Who's going to want to date me now? Who's going to want to be with me? I've got kids. I've just come out of this relationship where they clearly thought I wasn't good enough. What's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. There were flaws in that relationship. The other person didn't communicate it, and it was too late for you to actually realize that, hey, I want to do something to fix this. That's not a bad thing on your end. But there's a good chance now, well, there is a huge chance now that if you're sitting there listening to this, you are doing something to better yourself. And that's just it. And that's what this podcast is all about. You're doing something to better yourself. And what are the chances are of them doing something similar? Probably very slim. So if anything, you're gaining from this breakup. And it's really hard to see when you're going through this because you're just in the headspace of all these what ifs, whys, how come, all these questions that you're asking yourself. But I am huge believer in everything happens for a reason. Now, I know a lot of people don't like that. They just think, well, why did I go through this? Why did this happen? That's bullshit, Leanne. When you go through a breakup, realistically, if everything was working in that relationship, you wouldn't be where you are now. When we go through these really shit situations, it is a massive wake-up call to say, hey, something's not right here. You need to change something. You need to start to redirect where your life is going because this is not working. And quite often when we go through these shitty situations, such as big breakups like this, with kids, divorce, everything else, when we go through these situations, it is a big kick up the butt to say, hey, wake up, there is something not working. Because I can promise you now, nobody goes through a divorce or a breakup with kids who is in a perfect relationship. So there was something that wasn't right. There was something that you can do differently. There's something that you can learn in yourself. Whether it be to open up and not be so guarded, not hold grudges, talk when you're not happy. But at the end of the day, everything that we go through in life that kicks us down is kicking us down for a reason. It's kicking us to say, hey, wake the fuck up because this is not right. This is not working for you. And as I just said, you don't see that in the moment when you're going through a breakup. You don't see it. You're just too busy caught up in the whole blaming yourself, the whole thinking about what you could have done differently, the whole process of thinking, what if I did this? What if I did that? What if I just did this differently? What if I suggested counseling earlier? But realistically, you could not have changed anything. Because as I just touched on earlier, if they were willing to change, they would have done that. If they were willing to seek counseling, they would have addressed that. But they didn't. And this is why I'm all about empowering people to really appreciate where they're at in their single life, because there is so much you can take away from this. Because when you're in these relationships where you do get blindsided, it's quite often because you're caught up in this whole rat race of life and your relationship, and you've lost the whole romance. You've lost everything that you guys had as a partnership. And when you're here, when you actually learn to start to enjoy being single, that's when you can actually realize, okay, that wasn't working for me. That wasn't right for me. Now, there's always, or not always, but there's quite often a lot of people that still years down the track, they go through the stages of the what if. What if it worked? What if we were still together? But quite often when you go through this, there's always that one person that, as I touched on, doesn't want to change anything, that doesn't want to do anything different. A relationship isn't going to work just on one person putting in the effort. It's not going to be all butterflies and roses with just one person putting in the work on themselves. Both of you need to do that. And as hard as it is when you are going through that breakup, you will eventually get to a place where you realize, yeah, that wasn't right for me. I do deserve so much better than this. I do deserve a partner that is going to treat me equally and on the same page as them. I do deserve a partner that's going to be there for me when I need them. I do deserve a partner that's going to talk to me when things aren't right. I do deserve a partner that's going to suggest counseling or some sort of work on the relationship when things aren't working, instead of just saying, nope, I'm done and I'm clocking off. Everyone deserves better than that. And even though it's a hard thing to accept, even though it really takes a massive kick at your confidence and your self-worth, and you're left just constantly questioning yourself, I want you to understand it's not just your fault. You didn't break the relationship unless there was something specific that happened, maybe a cheating incident or something happened. But again, when these things happen, that's not being blindsided. That's not being blindsided. When you're cheating on someone, you're not being blindsided. You know that if you've cheated, you've broken the relationship and you've broken the trust. So please remember that relationships take two people to work, not one. Not one. It's not all your fault. You haven't done wrong. I mean, in hindsight, like I just said, there are things you probably you could have done differently, but there's lots of things that they could have done differently. For example, they could have approached it to you. They could have spoken to you. They could have worked on it. They didn't. They left it till they had completely clocked off, and then they told you you were done. You deserve better than that. You deserve so much better than that. And at this moment, you're thinking, why? This isn't right. What about the kids? But eventually, you'll realize that if you stayed together, it probably would have been toxic for the kids. If you stayed together, nothing in your relationship would have changed. So, if anything, I want you guys to take away from this episode, it's one. Communicate, communicate, communicate. I cannot emphasize that enough. Communication is a huge thing in all relationships, not just romantic relationships, friendships, work relationships, with our kids. anyone. You need to be able to speak up. Don't be a doormat. Don't feel like you need to stay quiet to keep other people happy. But just remember, there's a way to communicate where it's healthy, where it's not being confrontational. And secondly, it's not just your fault that the relationship ended. There were things that could have been done differently, but it's not your fault that it's ended because they didn't tell you. They didn't tell you what you could have fixed. They didn't tell you what you could have changed. They just left it till it was too late. And that's on them. They take accountability for that. So if you're at that place where you're struggling with this, because like I said, I have seen this so much lately in my work and it's heartbreaking. It really is. But you can get through this. And it's about building up your confidence, building up that self-worth, and being confident in yourself to know that you can communicate in issues or in situations, in relationships, when something doesn't sit right with you. You can communicate when you want to talk to your partner, when you want to work on things, when you want to better things. That's what it's all about. Having that confidence in yourself where you can talk about things. And one thing I say to my daughter, I used to see it a lot on social media. I don't see it so much anymore. But it was a quote that's saying someone is doing the same amount as you, but they've got so much more than you. Don't quote me verbatim. It's not exactly how it's worded. But the only difference is in that situation is their confidence. They've got the confidence in themselves to go for it. That's it. And that's what it's about in life. And you see all these people, it's like, well, why have they got this? Why have they got that? Why? How can they do that? Because quite often they've got the confidence to actually go for it. They've got the confidence to speak up and say, I'm going to do that. I'm going to give that a go. I'm going to start that podcast. I'm going to start that business. I'm going to actually reach out to that person. It's about having the confidence in yourself and knowing if it doesn't work, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. And when you're in relationships where you can feel like something's not working, you feel like something's not right, you're not going to wait till it gets too late. You're actually going to talk about it along the way because you have that confidence in yourself. So please reach out if that all resonates with you. If this is where you're at, you've just been blindsided, or you're struggling with your confidence, or you just can't communicate. You don't know how to communicate. You feel like you're one of those ones that's got to jump on social media and then you get 50,000 comments, or maybe that's an exaggeration, but you get all these comments and you're like, holy shit, what do I listen to? Who do I listen to? What should I do? And quite often their advice or their comments that you should not be listening to at all. Like I said earlier, when I see some of those comments, I'm like, oh my God, please do not give this advice to this person. Some of it I just cringe at. But anyway, if you do need support with anything like this along the way to help you through, and I do honestly recommend a good 3 months and you will see growth. You will see changes in yourself. But it's up to you. If you want to do a couple of sessions here and there, but a good 12 weeks and let's smash it out and let's make a difference in yourself, and you will sit there at the end of it and you'll realize that breakup wasn't my fault. That wasn't all on me. And I'm happy where I am now. I'm happy in myself and I know I've got so much more to give. That's what it's about. So if you are at that place, jump onto my show notes. I have a link to grab a one-on-one chat there. It's also in my socials. So if you're not following me on Facebook or Instagram, jump on over and say hi. And that's about it. I honestly thought this was going to be a really short episode today. I was expecting maybe 10-15 minute episode, but as always, I talk on a bit. So I do hope you got something valuable from this episode. Feel free to share any feedback. I love hearing your feedback on the episodes. Don't forget to follow so you get notifications of when the new episodes come out, and share it with your single parent friends who are going through something similar and need that support. That's it from me, guys. And if you are wanting that support, like I said, it's all in my show notes. Jump down there. And all those ebooks all still there as well. All those details for them are all in the show notes. So thanks, guys. Thank you all for coming back week after week. And until next week, I'll be in your ears then. Thank you for joining us on the Life After Plus One podcast. If you loved what you heard today and looking for some further support, then jump onto our website, lifeafterplusone.com. Plus, don't forget to check out our Instagram page for further resources and inspo. You can find all the links in the show notes. And remember, you're not alone on this path. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. And in the meantime, keep thriving, keep growing, and keep exploring your amazing life after plus one.